This demonstration is on using Pear Deck, which is a tool in Google Slides. And once you've installed Pear Deck in Google Slides, it will appear on the toolbar here. And if you just click on the Pear Deck icon, what will open up is the Pear Deck sidebar. And in the Pear Deck sidebar, you'll see some template files at different times that you can implement in your presentation. And near the bottom, there are these interactive questions to provide some informal assessments throughout your presentation. So I'm just going to show how we can use a lot of these interactive features in Pear Deck to create engaging Google Slide presentations. And I'm going to start by looking at one of the presentations I've created on chemical reactions. I teach chemistry, so this is a very relevant subject. And what I like to do when I start any presentation with the class is to create a mind map. I like the idea of starting off with a mind map because it allows the students to share their thoughts on a particular subject, and it also allows me to get feedback of their understanding of that subject before I begin a lesson. So to do this, Pear Deck actually has a built-in mind map slide. And what I can, if I just go through this and I click on this slide, what you'll see is the mind map slide created through and I can just enter chemical reactions. That's the concept. And anytime I create an interactive slide using Pear Deck, what you'll see is this this border and this bar at the bottom of the slide, and this tells me that this is an interactive Pear Deck slide. You'll also see in the text below basically a description of each interactive slide that you create. Now, when it goes through the presentation, and I'll show that in a little bit, the students will be able to see this slide on their devices, and they'll also have the option to add on any of their responses for this concept. So I go through some of the notes now, and I go through in this presentation. Often what I like to do is after a couple of slides, I like to incorporate these interactive concept-based questions. And one of these questions right now is a true or false question. So if I wanted to make this question more interactive and more involved with the students, I can create a Pear Deck based question by simply going down the Pear Deck sidebar, selecting the choice option. And by default, you can see it gives us three options for choices, but in this type of question for true or false questions, I really only need the two choices. So once I've entered those responses, I would just click Update Slide, and again, this is adding the interactive question. So once the interactive question is added, you'll see again the bar at the bottom as well as the description of each of what I've just created. Can go through the notes, and another type of question that I can incorporate after going through a couple more slides is a multiple choice concept question. So I would still go now to choice, and instead of removing one of the options, what I would do is I would just select add another, and then I would just add the options for here. I can manually add all these options there, or what I could do is just enter the letter and keep all the options directly on the slide. It really depends on how you want the students to view the question during the presentation. So as you get to the end of your presentation, Pear Deck offers some great features in the template library, and in particular, these end of lesson reflections or exit tickets. So there's a lot of different types of reflection questions, and one of the ones I like to incorporate in my class is basically this one. It's pretend your friend was absent from class today. Basically what this does is it's a great way of assessing the student's understanding of the material that was taught. Can they be able to take an entire lecture and condense it into a brief description of what were the main topics that were taught today? So this is just showing how I can create these interactive presentations. What I want to go through now is to see how it actually looks in a presentation mode. So typically with Google Slides, I would click on View and then Present, but for Pear Deck, I will click on the Present Lesson button on the sidebar. I want to make sure when I do this that I make sure that the Require Student Logins is turned off. By default, it's turned on, and I want to make sure that's off because if it's turned on, then the students are going to require a Google account to actually participate in the session. If it's turned off, they do not need that. They just need the website and the code. So as it's loading up here, you can see as I load this on the screen, you'll see what the students are seeing is the actual website as well as the code. And it gives me an idea of how many students are actually connected. And you know, right now there's obviously no students connected. I'm just going to enter on my phone, and as soon as I'm there, you can see one student is connected. So I can start the class now. And as I'm going through the slides, the students on their devices are going to be able to follow along with what I'm working on. So in this case, it's starting with the mind map. So students can now enter anywhere on this response, you know, anything, words that they enter, any words that are associated with the concept of chemical reactions. And as the instructor, you can display these by just clicking the show responses. So again, as you see, I entered a response for that. And if I keep entering responses, you'll see these words displayed on the projector screen. If you want to stop this, you can just click the lock screens button. And again, what that's able to do is students aren't able to enter any more responses. It's often useful towards the end when you have to take up this concept. So as you keep going through the lessons, I just want to get to an actual Pear Deck question. So this is a true or false. One thing I have the option to do is if I click there, there's different times. So I have the option to be able to choose which time there is. And as a student, I can just click on my response and you can see a distribution of all the responses that are shown. Now what I want to be able to do is I can lock the screens, and in my experience what happens is once students see all the responses, they have a tendency to change their response to the majority, and you really just want to get their honest response to a question. So you can keep going through the presentations. Again, another concept-based questions, and you can see the distribution of responses. So when you're towards the end of the presentation, you can just click the end, and you want to save the presentation for, you know, just any date. And then what you want to be able to do is once you saved it, you can review the sessions. And again, this allows you to actually go back and see how the students are understanding the material. Okay. So that is Pear Deck.